From what we understand, a vehicle crashed into the checkpoint structure at the Rainbow Bridge. You're seeing it right here at a high rate of speed. It hit the structure, caught fire, and then exploded. An initial search did not find any indications of an explosive device in the car. I do want to stress this situation is very fluid, and this is just preliminary information that we're getting right now. There are 2 casualties from what we understand, 2 people that were inside the car. To be clear, we do not know yet if the incident was intentional or simply an accident. As a precaution, though, several border crossings between Western New York and Canada have been closed for now. The White House has been briefed as well, as the governor of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul, is headed to Buffalo right now to meet with law enforcement and first responders. I want to get right to Ken Delaney, our justice and intelligence correspondent. Ken, I also want to tell our viewers that Governor Hochul has also instructed New York State Police and the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force to monitor all entries into the state of New York. It talks about the severity of the situation right now. Again, all we know right now is there's been an explosion at this checkpoint. But tensions are very high in this country and all over the world because of the Israel and Hamas war. Also, it is a time where tomorrow's a holiday and people can think that there are soft targets. Talk to us about what your reporting has shown you so far and what we think this is at this hour.
Good afternoon, Tom. I think you're right to caution viewers that this is a very fluid situation. The law enforcement officials I've been speaking to here in Washington say it's too soon to say much of anything about this. But as you mentioned, our colleagues Tom Winter and Jonathan Dietz have reported the important initial finding that there was no car bomb inside this vehicle. The vehicle approached from the Canada side to the U.S. border checkpoint at a high rate of speed, as you said, and caused a pretty large explosion, which is why there was a lot of speculation initially that there may have been a car bomb. But again, our reporting is that there was no evidence of a car bomb. What remains to be known is whether this was an intentional act or an accident of some sort, a medical emergency. All these kinds of scenarios are possible. What's been clear from the people I've been talking to is they're not ready to even use the word terrorism in connection with this incident. They just say there is no evidence to support that. Nonetheless, they are being vigilant and investigating. I was also told that in addition to the 2 casualties among the vehicle occupants, 1 Customs and Border Protection officer at the checkpoint suffered minor injuries, but that there were no other injuries among the government workers at that checkpoint.
And
Tom,
we should talk about this checkpoint, right? It is a very busy checkpoint. At times, it's open 24/7. It connects Canada and the U.S., but there are multiple other locations, other bridges in this area that have now been shut down as well. And Ken, explain to our viewers, because lawmakers have brought up the issue about the safety of the border, our northern border with Canada, and if it indeed could be at times a soft target.
Yeah, that's right, Tom, because there is concern that there are not enough resources, at least that's what you hear from critics in Congress, devoted to defending that portion of the border, given the crisis on the southern border and the surging of officers and resources to the south. In the north, there is concern that there's relatively fewer staffing and resources around those border checkpoints, and that, in fact, they could be potentially soft targets targeted from people coming in from Canada. And as you mentioned, we are at a state of heightened threat in this country. The FBI director and others have said that the threat from terrorism, principally lone wolf inspired attacks inside the United States, is as high as it's been in many, many years because of the tensions over the Israel-Hamas conflict. And so, yeah, the northern border is a flashpoint of concern, as are many other soft targets across the country.
Ken, I want to put up the statement we have from the FBI in Buffalo that appears to be the lead agency right now, the lead field office that's taking care of this investigation. Here's what they posted on X. The FBI field office is investigating a vehicle explosion at the Rainbow Bridge, a border crossing between the U.S. and Canada in Niagara Falls. The FBI is coordinating with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners in this investigation. As this situation is very fluid, that's all we can say at this time. And Ken, I want you to explain to our viewers that even though this may have been an accident, and I want to stress at this hour we do not know what this is, but even if this was an accident and it is not terror related, the governor, the FBI, state police, they're not going to take any chances, right? They're going to send all their resources because of the timing right now and because of the importance of this crossing.
100%, Tom, and because this is a national target, it's not just a state or a local matter, so the FBI swoops in right away. I think it is significant, though, that the Buffalo field office is taking the lead and making the statements on this, not FBI headquarters in Washington. If there was evidence of some kind of terror plot here, a concrete evidence, you may see more of a national response, but we're not seeing that. We're seeing the Buffalo FBI, state and local authorities, but you're absolutely right. They are taking no chances here, particularly because the size of that explosion was significant. It may have been caused by a full gas tank, but nonetheless, it raised a lot of concerns right away. Again, our reporting at NBC News is that no evidence of a vehicle bomb was found inside that vehicle, Tom.
All right, Ken Delaney first. Ken, stand by for us. If you are just tuning in right now to NBC, we are covering some breaking news at the border with Canada in Niagara Falls. There's been a car explosion right at the border crossing on the Rainbow International Bridge. This happened about an hour ago. We're still trying to get information. From what we understand right now, this is a car crashed into the checkpoint and then exploded. You're looking at video, the first piece of video that we got into the newsroom showing those flames outside that Customs and Border Protection checkpoint. I want to bring in right now Clint Watts. He's a national security analyst and a former FBI counterterrorism division. Clint, you're watching this. You know what's happening around the world, what's happening at this checkpoint right here. What are the first thoughts that are coming to your mind?
I think it's a balance between, is this a local accident or incident, just based on some individuals in a car that created this scenario, or is it tied to international or even a sort of domestic related terrorism incident? A few things to look for, which you're already discussing with Ken. If this were an international terrorism incident, we would be looking for things like a joint bulletin from DHS and maybe the FBI about potential attacks at a border incident, or we would be looking for some sort of relationship or a declaration by a terror group that they committed this attack. We're not seeing that at present. There also didn't seem to be an explosive device in the car or any sort of secondary device that we know of yet. And it seems like law enforcement is working through that, but there's no reason to believe that. It could be that this car just exploded due to the speed at which it was accelerating and gas caught fire in the engine. We don't know yet. The things that we will know, I think, very quickly is you probably have a car with a license plate, a VIN number, and video footage of the individuals inside. It says there were two people inside of it. They'll maybe be able to identify those individuals and trace it out. The real concern is this tied to other international incidents? Is it part of a larger series of attacks potentially that happen on a holiday weekend? That's always what we look for. An example of this is the Millennium Plot dating back in 2000, where there was a terrorist who tried to go from Canada into the United States and was stopped at the border. So these are the considerations they'll be looking at. I think at this time we just don't have enough information to know which it is, a localized accident or really part of a broader sort of motivation around a terrorist incident.
And Clint, while you're with us, I do want to stress our reporting right now is not that this is terrorism just yet. We're going to stay reporting this out. We're just reporting what we know and what we can confirm so far, and that there's been an explosion at this international crossing. I do want to ask you, though, because you mentioned the holidays. The holidays are a time sometimes, as you just brought up, when people seeking to do harm to America may want to strike for a variety of reasons, including sometimes the staffing is not up to par. There's going to be people gathering at parades and celebrations all across the state as well. And this is something, obviously, that people, if they wanted to do harm to America, they're monitoring, Clint.
That's right. It is not unusual for an attacker, particularly with a terrorist motivation, ideological motivation, to pick a holiday timeframe or a key date or key event. At the same point, we've seen attacks happen on holidays. You might remember back to, I believe it was 2020, the Christmas Day bombing in Nashville, which ultimately was tied to no ideological cause, but which a major incident of violence. At the same point, we do have the Israel-Hamas war going on. Hamas has called for global jihad, essentially international terrorist attacks, and its support. We've not seen much response to that. There hasn't been any uptick in chatter that's visible from a grand scale, but it doesn't mean that one individual, what we would say mediated terrorist, wouldn't take up the cause and maybe try and execute an attack, and this could be that form. I think it's still way too early for us to know. As evidence comes in, we can start to move in which of these scenarios actually is playing out at the moment.
And again, we're just going to report what we've confirmed so far. And with that, I want to get over to Kelly O'Donnell. She's traveling with President Biden. She joins us live right now. Kelly, I know there's not a whole lot of information out there, but I know you have some reporting you can share with our viewers.
Well, Tom, I'm told by a senior official that the president is about to be briefed on this incident. Staff up until this point have been trying to gather the relevant information from federal and state officials and authorities who are investigating on the scene. And so the president will now be formally told what the federal government has at this point. This is typical. Of course, the president is on Nantucket for the holiday with his family, but he is always staffed for these kinds of circumstances, the unexpected, anything that could happen both domestically and around the world. The president also just got off the phone with the Emir of Qatar, talking to him about the deal for the hostages in the 40-plus day war between Israel and Hamas. So the president is balancing a number of things. That call now over, and the president will be getting this briefing shortly, I'm told. So from the White House perspective at this time, they, of course, are also telling us to be cautious to see what the facts bear out. But in terms of how this operates, of course, the Situation Room functions back at the White House 24/7, where initial information from all different kinds of entry points around the country can come in. The president has staff with him from the national security side, Homeland Security, and all of that who travel with him. He's got the secure communications here on Nantucket. And so the president has the ability to be briefed on all of this, and that is about to happen as the president is juggling various issues. The thing we've been watching so carefully over a period of days, that very tenuous deal that has now been reached and will play out over days about the release of hostages. And now this unexpected event, which so often is what you see that can change the course of events, the unexpected that brings up some of these critical issues. And yet we don't know where this is headed in terms of what kind of an incident it is, the accident or something else, as you've described. But for the White House, this is a fact-gathering moment, a chance to brief the president, and they are certainly encouraging us to be patient as they learn more. But it's certainly a serious situation. This Rainbow Bridge goes back to 1940, connecting Canada and the U.S. at a huge tourist location. And of course, anything dealing with the border right now is also considered of great concern. We've seen how the FBI director has talked about risks in the homeland. And so all of that has to be processed and factored in as they gather specifics and learn, most importantly, what can officials on the ground tell the federal government and the White House for the president to then get a sense of what he may or may not need to do about this specific incident. Tom?
Kelly O'Donnell, stay with us. If you get any new reporting, we will check back with you. As we monitor what officials here in the U.S. are saying, Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, just reacted to the incident. Let's listen in.
Mr. Speaker, this is obviously a very serious situation in Niagara Falls. There was a vehicle explosion at the Rainbow Bridge crossing. I've been briefed by the NSIA and the Minister of Public Safety. CBSA, RCMP, and Transport Canada are all fully engaged in providing the necessary support. There are a lot of questions, and we are following up to try and get as many answers as rapidly as possible. We are in close contact with U.S. officials, and we'll continue to work closely with them. We will continue to be engaged. We will provide updates. Updates I can give right now is there are 4 border crossings that are right now closed: Rainbow Bridge, Whirlpool Bridge, Queenston Bridge, and Peach. Additional measures are being contemplated and activated at all border crossings across the country. We are taking this extraordinarily seriously, and Mr. Speaker, I will have to excuse myself now to go get further updates and work on this very serious situation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Justin Trudeau there. I also want to point out, as we hear from more and more officials, as we're learning more about what happened here, people are being very, very cautious in the way they describe this incident. And right now here at NBC, we are describing this just like you see on your screen there, the FBI investigating what appears to be a vehicle explosion at the U.S. Canada border. With that, I want to now bring in our reporter here in New York, Kathy Park, who's been monitoring these developments and also has heard from eyewitnesses. Kathy, what can you tell us?
Well, Tom, keep in mind the timing of all this, because it is perhaps one of the busiest travel days of the year as folks get ready to head to their Thanksgiving destinations. And as a precaution, we have learned that the Buffalo International Airport, they are heightening their security, also just checking vehicles as they enter the area. We have also learned from Erie County that several buildings in that area, county buildings, are closing early just as a precaution. And we've been hearing throughout your report that all Western New York York bridge crossings between the U.S. and Canada have been closed due to the ongoing investigation. But, Tom, we did have a chance to hear from witnesses on the ground who saw the blast. Take a listen.
No, my wife and I were walking down Main Street here, and the car was coming flying back here, like over 100 miles an hour. We could hardly even see me. It was going that quick. There was a car in front of him. He swerved around it, and then it looked like he hit the fence, and the fire started, and then all of a sudden he went up in the air, and then it was a ball of fire like 30, 40 feet high. Never seen anything like it. It was really incredible.
I'm sorry, sir, you were what?
And, Tom, we should point out, obviously, there is a lot of law enforcement movement at this time. Governor Kathy Hochul tweeted out that she is en route to Buffalo to meet with law enforcement, working closely with FBI, and the Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, has also been briefed on the matter. Tom.
Kathy, that eyewitness statement there shedding a lot of light on this situation. We also have some reporting that's just come in. NBC News can now confirm that at least 2 people who were inside that car have died. We also know from our reporting here that a senior law enforcement official tells NBC News that a Customs and Border Protection officer suffered minor injuries. To get more on that reporting, I want to bring back Ken Delaney. And Ken, what are you hearing from your sources and our investigative team? What more have they learned since we last checked in with you?
Tom, again, they're being very cautious because they say they're getting very preliminary information. This is a scene and an incident that is hard to discern in terms of motive and exactly what transpired. From some of the witness accounts that you're seeing, there does appear to have been some suspicious behavior by the drivers of that vehicle. But again, 4 law enforcement officials telling our Tom Winter and Jonathan Deans that they found no evidence of a car bomb. So whatever caused that explosion does not appear to have been an explosive device, may have been the gas tank in the vehicle, but that doesn't speak to the question of motive of whether the driver of that car intentionally crashed it into a checkpoint or whether there was an accident. That, Tom, remains to be seen.
Yeah, Clint Watts, I know you're still with us here. You've been monitoring what we've been reporting, and we just heard from that eyewitness, right? And if we take him at his word, it sort of changes from our understanding, at least, what happened here, because you have a vehicle traveling at an incredible rate of speed. He said it felt like 100 miles per hour, crashing into a fence near the border checkpoint and then exploding. What can we sort of decipher from that?
I think the key part is if that assessment is correct from that eyewitness, it is a deliberate act. This wasn't something that was accidental. I think that was one of the questions we had is this somebody who made an error trying to get to the gate or get up to the border? That definitely doesn't seem to be the case based on the speed of the vehicle he was talking about and what happened there at the fence. But it still doesn't really clarify the motive. We know there was this incident, that we know there was a massive explosion, but was this individually motivated? Were they literally just trying to break through the border for some very strange reason? Or was this part of more of an international terrorism incident between Canada and the U.S.? Was there some deliberate reason to target that border crossing? I think we still don't know that. I think the interesting part is we do know that there were 2 individuals in the car. We do know that there does not seem to have been a car bomb or a detonating device, that the explosion was part of the accident. The other part is we'll likely know, based on the make and model, the license plate, and probably the VIN number, maybe who this vehicle belonged to, which is sometimes always a question. So I imagine in the coming hours, we're going to find a lot more details that will help us sort through which of these scenarios it might be in terms of this. Was it an attack, a deliberate attack, or was it an incident that was more tied directly to these 2 individuals?
Clint, before I let you go, have we seen in times past where people looking to do harm would use the car in sort of a kamikaze-like attack like that? Because usually when you think of explosions in cars, it's a little different.
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to this. There's the vehicle-borne IED scenario. I think that's what everybody was wanting to know about when it first happened. Was this an explosive-laden car deliberately pushed at a piece of infrastructure to try and cause a massive explosion? Does not seem like that's the case. At the same point, we have seen many, and I mean many, terrorist attacks over the years, some in New York City, one in North Carolina, many overseas. You might remember back to Barcelona, where a car was used as the weapon in a terrorist attack. So that'll be one of the questions that we're looking at the rest of the afternoon.
Clint Watt, we appreciate all your analysis. That's going to conclude this NBC News special report for now. We're going to be back on as news warrants, as we get information. More ahead on our streaming network, NBC News Now, online at NBCnews.com. Thank you.